writing an icon of the Theotokos.
Welcome to session 6. This time we're going to be painting some details. In particular, we're going to be painting some details on Mary's clothing. Now, cloth is a little bit of a hard thing to wrap our head around. Or is it easy to wrap cloth around our heads? Either way, we have to think of how fabric sits on a three-dimensional space. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with Mary's head, because her head is a relatively simple shape. It's round like a ball, and the cloth that sits on it just hangs on top of this ball. So I literally here have a ball, which is green, so it's probably going to show up kind of interestingly on the green screen, and a piece of cloth that I've just thrown on top of it. And you will notice that as the cloth hangs on it, it kind of hangs around the shape of the ball. And there are spots where the light hits more intensely and other areas where it's more shaded. And so you have basically lighting showing that this is three-dimensional, even though you're watching it on a two-dimensional TV screen. What we're going to try and do is make those brighter spots show up so that her head doesn't look like a flat picture, but rather it has some roundness to it. Now, we're not going to go crazy doing all sorts of detail, but we're going to try to put in a few highlights here or there. And in the etching that we've carved into your board, that shows the direction of where the fabric is being pulled, of how it's hanging over the shape. So, you'll need your brighter red color to paint on top of your darker red color to show the brighter spots. And we're going to put some lines along her head. Put these on the inside, so towards the center of each of those carved lines. Not on the carved lines, but next to the carved lines. At the bottom, it would be a little bit wider, and towards the top, it comes to a point, because just like fabric does, it at the top is nice and flat and stretched out, but at the bottom hangs in bigger waves. And it also would be nice to put a couple extra, one on each side, just to show that the fabric is hanging down there as well. Once we've put in those relatively simple shapes, now it's time to kind of soften the soft edges. We don't have spots where there's light and spots where there's no light, and that's it. There's areas in between where there is some light, but maybe not as much as where it is brightest. So this is where we get to mix paints. But before you just go dumping some of your light red into your dark red or dark red into your light, this is where I have to caution you. When you're going to mix paints, never mix them in the original pot. Instead, take a piece of paper or a paper plate or something of that sort, scoop a little bit of paint and place it on that piece of paper. Then wash your brush so that you can scoop the other color of paint without getting any of the other color contaminating it. Once you have a scoop of dark red and a scoop of light red, then you can mix them on the paper without getting your container messed up. Now with this medium red, not too light, not too dark, we can soften the edges. And in this case, we want to soften again the inner side to show that that's where things kind of flow nicely. On the outer edge, we can imagine it wrapping quickly around and therefore having a harder edge. Now, the clothing isn't just on her head. She also has clothing on the rest of her as well. And it gets pulled in various directions. You'll notice the vestments that I'm wearing get pulled because they are being pulled or pinched by particular forces, whether it's gravity or whether it's the cross that I wear or whether it's me literally pulling on something, creating lines and folds in it. It's important that we put the lines in the direction that seems natural. We don't want the lines to go opposite of where the pull is. We want them to go towards the pull. So whenever you're painting fabric, always think, go with the flow. How would this fabric hang naturally? And put any kind of lines or shapes in those directions. So at the bottom part of the icon, where you can see these arrows pointing, don't forget to put a little bit of light in those areas. Now, if you put too much, basically, you lose everything and there's no more lines left. So you only need to put a little bit of highlights in to show that flow of the fabric. Now, the inside fabric also does have some pulls as well. So instead of using the lighter red on the dark red, in this case, we're going to use some of the dark red on the light red. And just to give a little bit of contrast to show that the fabric is indeed fabric. As always, if you need to pause the video so you can look at the picture more, go for it. And have fun painting this section,